very early in 2025, all hell is going to break loose.
Do you ever find yourself just asking, what the hell is going on?
Complete destruction.
Go yourself.
Extinction.
It's normal now for us to talk about nuclear war.
Nuclear weapons.
World War III.
War with China by 2027.
The human birth rate is plummeting.
76,000 fewer than the previous year.
Biggest proportion fall in fertility rates.
The steady hand of the neoliberal post-war establishment is facing collapse.
He's not going to win.
Donald Trump has been elected.
Go yourself.
And experts from the field of AI keep warning us that we may face an extinction event if we allow it to develop unregulated.
Dangers of AI.
Risk of extinction.
We have billionaires planning to leave the planet and colonize the solar system, building secret underground apocalyptic bunkers, the apocalypse lingering in our collective consciousness, literal conversations about an Antichrist, and all the while the inescapable feeling that we're about to discover something unimaginable about a non-human intelligence.
There is something out there. Reverse engineering of objects.
Unidentified drones.
There is not any truth to that.
Are you kidding me?
The public can't deal with it. It's too far out.
The truth is indigestible.
Non-human intelligence exists.
Non-human biologics.
People coming from space.
Very early in 2025, all hell is going to break loose.
The idea that we're going to have some sort of big announcement around UFO disclosure is deeply tantalizing. If you're anything like me, if you're involved in this movement, the prospect that Donald Trump or some other big figure might come out and say something authoritative on this matter and blow the doors off of the secrecy is deeply exciting. But in today's video, I want to take a bit of a contrarian position. The truth is, whether or not some big event happens at the start of this year, whether we have someone standing up and saying that this phenomenon is real, it really doesn't matter. We don't need all hell to break loose at the start of 2025. Do you know why? Because all hell has been trickling into our collective consciousness for nearly a decade at this point. If you look back to the mid-2000s and to the early 2010s and compare it to where we are as a society today, the change is enormous. Not simply in terms of geopolitics, not simply in terms of exopolitics and the idea of a non-human intelligence, not just in our advancements in artificial intelligence and technology, but in so many ways. It's as if somebody's been turning the screws on our reality so that each individual component that we've relied upon during our existence is slowly facing the forces of entropy. Whilst we were all collectively thumbing through our iPhones and asking whether or not 8 hours of screen time is socially acceptable, the real world around us has slowly been unraveling. When you sit down and aggregate all of the stories, all of the discoveries, all of the news, and all of the crises that are emerging around us, you're left with a sense that our new emerging reality is a strange milkshake of existential wonder mixed with apocalyptic dread.
The man widely seen as the godfather of artificial intelligence has quit his job at Google, warning of the dangers of AI.
This year, we saw key figures from the world of artificial intelligence blowing the whistle and warning us about the possible extinction-level events that we may face if it continues to develop unregulated. So much for the time-saving benefits and boost in productivity from ChatGPT 3Me47IO. The people actually running AI companies and leading on the cutting edge of this industry are deeply concerned that if this technology continues to develop and eventually start to develop itself unregulated, it could literally turn on the human species. You might be looking at me right now and thinking, don't be so dramatic. But the truth is, this news story came out to you and to me this year, but we were all far too busy on our skibbity toilet.
Dr. Geoffrey Hinton's pioneering research on deep learning and neural networks has paved the way for current AI systems like ChatGPT. But in a lengthy interview with the New York Times, Dr. Hinton said he now regretted his work.
And we have to worry about whether they'll want to take control away from us. That's something we should think seriously about. In between 5 and 20 years from now, there's a probability of about a half that we'll have to confront the problem of them trying to take over.
Regulations are really only put into effect after something terrible has happened.
If that's the case for AI, and we only put in regulations after something terrible has happened, it may be too late to actually put the regulations in place. The AI may be in control at that point.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world. If this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong, and we want to be vocal about that.
If AI is left unchecked, it poses a, quote, risk of extinction.
Well, I wish I knew how far we were from this scenario, because I could be making more progress on building my bunker.
What a funny little joke there about apocalyptic bunkers. Well, it would be pretty funny if it wasn't the case that many billionaires are literally building apocalyptic bunkers whilst you and I go about our day jobs. Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, and many other anomalous billionaires are all preparing to ensure that they will be safe in the face of some kind of awful event. And this was the year that Mark Zuckerberg was confronted about his plans to build a vast apocalyptic bunker equipped with space for himself, his family, his friends, and even a staff on a remote Hawaiian island.
Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, they plan to build a 5,000 square foot underground shelter on their Hawaii ranch.
You do have a bunker there. Is there something you know that we don't?
No, I think that's just like a little shelter under...
The shelter's door will be made out of metal and filled with concrete.
I'm just saying.
Why?
Rich people are building bunkers.
Yeah, in Hawaii.
That's not a good sign.
How many have seen The Last of Us in the zombie apocalypse? I mean, it's the first thing that comes to mind.
When you have that much money, when you're a billionaire, you either go up to space, you go find somewhere else to live, or you go down.
And is it interesting that in that news clip, they don't just mention the idea of building underground bunkers, they also contrast it with this idea of leaving the planet to build elsewhere. But talking about billionaires going up into space, what I find most interesting is the way that Elon Musk frames the reasons why humanity must venture and become a multi-planet species.
2 reasons for life to become multiplanetary. We want the light of consciousness to not be extinguished if something were to happen to Earth. As humans, we actually have the power to destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons.
Apocalyptic rhetoric is on the rise. The idea of the apocalypse is commonplace now. And this is what I meant when I said that we don't need all hell to break loose at the start of 2025, because the concept of hell and the apocalypse and extinction has been trickling into our nomenclature over the last decade. The truth is that the human species is actually in decline.
According to the CDC, 3.6 million babies were born in 2023 in the U.S. That's about 76,000 fewer than the previous year, and the lowest one-year tally since 1979.
It's actually quite likely that in the not-too-distant future, the global population is going to decline. But in the U.S., we're facing a shrinking working-age population pretty imminently. So I think that's something that we need to be worried about. Our working-age population has been stagnant for a while. Births in the U.S. have been falling persistently and precipitously since 2007, and I don't see any reason to think they're going to turn around.
This decline in the birth rate and in human fertility, and indeed in our willingness to venture out and participate in human relationships, has been going on for quite a while now. And if you correlate the exact moment when it really began to go downhill, it was pretty much the moment that we started to adopt smartphones and technology started to become way too invasive and pervasive in our lives. Now, I'm not saying that I have all the answers, the facts, and the data, but I do think we live in a society where we are unable to question these large corporations because they're ultimately run for power and for profit. And the fact that the technology that they're developing and the way that they're making their money could potentially be correlated to the decline in human fertility and the birth rate is a question that is far too explosive for them to have to deal with. But there is some good news, because whilst normal human beings are no longer being born, there are now rumors of a genetically modified superhuman being prepared for the advent of the global conflict that we are sleepwalking into.
Mankind is currently facing many threats. Due to the genetic researches, it is now possible to create a superhuman, a specialized human being, a genetically engineered athlete, scientist, military man.
There are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense involving the manipulation of human genetics with what is described as non-human genetic material, potentially for the enhancement of human capabilities.
As we see AI explode and human vitality beginning to decline, there's this weird third space that begins to emerge, this transhuman modified version of a human being. If you were to go back to 2008 and 2009 and the dawn of YouTube conspiracy theories, back then people like Alex Jones and David Icke were talking about these concepts and people laughed at them. And yet the trajectory of human civilization is showing us that this is exactly where we are heading. None of this is to mention Elon Musk's Neuralink, which this year saw its first patient successfully implanted with the device, which enables you to directly interface with human technology, essentially giving our soon-to-be benevolent AI overlords a direct channel into our brain boxes. All the while, whilst astonishing sci-fi concepts are becoming increasingly normal in our human society, apocalyptic rhetoric is on the rise. The idea of the apocalypse is commonplace now. And it's remarkable to see the billionaire class participating in this dialogue as well, whether that's an indirect participation like the likes of Mark Zuckerberg building his underground bunker, or direct participation from people like Elon Musk, who recently featured on a podcast where he started to speculate about the rabbit hole of ice ages and where human writing may have emerged from.
I think there was probably something significant that happened in the last ice age. Something happened around that ice age that, because we see no writing before that ice age, and we start to see writing pop up in multiple places on Earth after the most recent colloquially termed ice age.
Now, once again, it's easy to give too much credit to a billionaire sitting on a sofa riffing about videos that he's been watching on YouTube. But despite that individual conversation, there is a mass conversation happening right now. This was the year that Graham Hancock's series Ancient Apocalypse made it to big screens via Netflix. When I was growing up, my mum had Graham Hancock's books on her shelves, and he seemed like some sort of underground, unknown author who was making speculations that would always be consigned to the realm of conspiracy theory. And yet today, the world's largest streaming platform, and indeed the premier destination for film, screen, TV, and all things associated, is now streaming these ideas directly into the consciousness of the global population, meaning that we are all becoming far more acclimatized to the idea that advanced human society may have existed for far longer than we originally anticipated. But what has been most fascinating to me in terms of apocalyptic rhetoric this year is that Peter Thiel, tech billionaire and founder of Palantir, has been imploring people to start getting worried about the Antichrist.
So Peter Thiel, I'm quoting you now. What I hope to retrieve is a sense of the stakes, of the urgency of the question. The stakes are really, really high. It seems very dangerous that we're at a place where so few people are concerned about the Antichrist.
Armageddon is not that taboo. You can just talk about that by referencing the newspapers.
Right.
You know, we are sleepwalking into Armageddon. That's totally acceptable. So that tells you that's not the thing that's taboo. Antichrist is like, wow, what planet are you from? You know, we should worry about both, but if you had to prioritize them, you should be way more worried about the Antichrist because no one's worried about it.
In the longer video, Peter Thiel expounds what he's talking about in terms of the Antichrist. And the basic idea is this. During a time of emerging crises and the talk of an apocalypse, human society becomes far more vulnerable to someone appearing and saying, hey, I have a solution to this. Everything's going really badly, but if we just do this thing, if we go for this type of policy, this type of government, this type of approach, everything will get better. And because humanity is facing an extinction level event, they all sign up to this individual like they are some sort of superhero. That is the logic of the Antichrist, and that is the concept that is in the biblical scriptures. And of course, people fall for this, and everything goes wrong because the Antichrist's intentions are actually really bad. Now, I don't know how literally Peter Thiel takes the biblical scriptures, but the fact that he's referring to the concept of the Antichrist and imploring normal people to start taking it seriously is absolutely fascinating. All of this is especially interesting as we begin to consider the reality of a non-human intelligence more and more. For someone like Peter Thiel, I suspect the idea of suddenly revealing the truth about non-human intelligences and suddenly getting people aware that they might exist and we might indeed have a relationship with them might be slightly concerning. But while someone like Peter Thiel looks at the idea of outside help as deeply concerning, there are others out there who look at that idea as our only hope to move forwards. Here is Dr. Gary Nolan.
Many in humanity today sort of feel like we're on the edge of an apocalypse. I mean, how many movies and TV shows are about the post-apocalyptic world? And humanity is scrabbling again to find a way forward just to survive. We're back practically to the Stone Age. So I look at these things, whatever they might be, as hopeful that somebody found a way beyond the apocalypse.
Where Peter Thiel looks at people offering solutions and the proposal of some outside help with skepticism, someone like Dr. Gary Nolan looks at it as potentially our only chance to survive what's going on with our planet at the moment. And here emerges a fascinating contrast, that one person's salvation is another person's Antichrist. If you're looking for the seeds of a possible spiritual conflict, they are right here, being planted into the ground that you and I walk on every single day. But still, there are other billionaires out there with different perspectives. Here's Bob Bigelow.
If I understand what you're saying, it's basically like the data that is coming into you from multiple sources leads you to have a pessimistic outlook on the future of humanity. Yeah. And you're looking for some way that we might be able to change that apparent destiny.
I don't think that's an achievable goal for me.
Okay.
I think I'm an explorer, and I think that problem is gigantic.
Well, you're talking about something, a huge topic most people can't begin to wrap their minds around, the potential extinction of our species.
Bob Bigelow, whether he's speaking or whether he's just sat there looking into the distance, can't help but be the embodiment of pessimism. But frankly, who can blame him? As a society, we have been collectively sleepwalking into a global conflict for years, and actually, to be honest, probably for over a decade. And in 2024, we saw conflicts blowing up all over the world, with seemingly no attempt from Joe Biden and other world leaders to establish meaningful diplomatic relationships and try and have conversations with different world leaders about how we can maintain a state of world peace. I think any meaningful analysis of the 2024 US election must conclude that one of the reasons the Democrats lost is because they provided no compelling narrative about how they were going to stop the conflicts that have been emerging and usher in a new era of diplomacy and peace. Instead, when Kamala Harris was asked how she would differ from Joe Biden's policies, she said that she couldn't think of anything that she would want to change, which was an absolutely mind-blowing thing to say given the current state of the planet. Whatever you might think of him, Donald Trump at least put forward a message, and we'll see how this bears out in reality, but he put out a message that he wanted to stop the conflicts and to bring the world back from the edge of World War III. Donald Trump managed to astonish the world again by getting a second term in the White House. And it's hard to deny that the global conflict emerging around us, caused by our current global elites, played a part in Biden and Kamala Harris's downfall and Donald Trump's return to the White House. Despite this, Joe Biden decided, having lost the election, having lost his mandate, and having lost the majority of the American population's respect for his decision for ongoing conflict, he decided this was the moment to escalate the situation in Ukraine.
Welcome to the News Hour. 1,000 days ago, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And today, Ukraine marked that grim milestone with a first, using a long-range American missile system to hit a target inside Russia.
And a Russian lawmaker saying a move by the Biden administration as it relates to Ukraine risks starting World War III.
What Joe Biden did was give Ukraine American missiles and, crucially, give them permission to fire them directly into Russia, marking a significant escalation from what at that point you could have somehow argued might have been a proxy war to what increasingly looked like a direct conflict between two nuclear superpowers. And all of this done after the Democrats lost the election. Now, this is infuriating and despicable, but what I find absolutely fascinating is how it correlates to the emerging unknown drone crisis all around the world. Joe Biden approved the ATACMS missiles on the 21st of November 2024, and almost precisely on that date, mysterious drones started to emerge around military bases and sensitive nuclear facilities all around the world.
The U.S. Air Force says unidentified drones have been spotted over 4 joint U.S. and U.K. military bases in England. The mysterious drones have repeatedly appeared for over a week now.
You can't have random things flying around secure military sites, and that is exactly what the UK and US military based here have been dealing with publicly, at least for the last 5 or 6 nights. Last night there were more reports of objects in the sky above RAF air bases from Oxfordshire to Norfolk and Suffolk, we're told it's not just kids playing around because, and I'm quoting, their flights were coordinated over a series of days.
As for numbers, the FBI says it's received more than 3,000 tips from the public about drone sightings.
You're telling me we don't know what the hell these drones are?
For weeks, we've asked for the truth. Now, we are demanding it. As the sightings increase, including by service members at Naval Weapons Station Earl, and I did talk to the commander there, his men are seeing it right there at the base. Are you kidding me?
Can you comment on the drones?
The government knows what is happening, and for some reason they don't want to comment.
Why not just take one down and figure out what's going on?
Well, okay, the idea of taking something down, again, you want to worry about public safety. First of all, we don't have enough conclusions to take that kind of a policy action, but let's just assume for a minute, Martha, that we did. I mean, you're not going to want to shoot something down where it could hit somebody's house or hurt somebody.
Well, the Coast Guard says that there are 30 of them following one of their ships in the ocean. So would that work?
I mean, again, we have to develop the policy options based on what we know we're dealing with here, and we just don't know enough to make those kinds of...
We have no idea whether these drones are American technology that has been deployed in response to something, whatever that is, we wouldn't know, or whether this is adversarial technology like Russia or China that's been deployed literally in the continental United States, which would be absolutely terrifying. The drones themselves clearly are not non-human technology, and if they are, then I guess non-human intelligences are behaving quite strangely, but then again, the world is quite a strange place right now. We don't have any idea what these things are, but what we do know is that in the closing days of the Biden administration, the national security state seems somewhat paralyzed and feels unable to communicate clearly with the American public or even give them some compelling cover story. On the plus side, there is a slither of a chance that during Donald Trump's presidency, we may see the release of some of the critical JFK files that have been withheld for so long.
One of the things that I want to talk to you about is the JFK files. How much of it did you read into?
I think it's going to be just fine to open it. Let me put it that way. I think it's fine. It's going to be time. It's a cleansing. It's really a cleansing.
RFK Jr. has long suspected the CIA had some kind of role in the assassination of his uncle. And now he has a powerful ally in the push for answers.
I think that Robert Kennedy Jr. is motivated by the belief of his father, who never believed the story that his brother was killed by a lone gunman, and who always suspected CIA and mafia elements were behind his brother's death.
We found out that Kennedy, on June 5th of 1963, and this would be June, July, August, September, October, like 5 months earlier, that he had asked to be briefed on the UFO stuff. He wanted all the UFO stuff.
The JFK assassination files were due to be released nearly a decade ago, but the defense and intelligence community has withheld them for so long, which makes you ask, what is it that's in those files that is so concerning to them? Given the fact that nearly everybody involved in that event is now dead, the truth is that any sensible basic analysis of the JFK assassination reveals that there was some sort of cover-up, and the truth of what happened has been obscured by the defense and intelligence community. And the reason for that is very likely because the CIA orchestrated the murder of a sitting US president because they didn't like the way that he was running his office. The revelation of this would be such a deep and devastating blow to the defense and intelligence establishment that it may never recover the trust of the American population, which is all the more reason to actually be pretty skeptical that this is going to happen. After all, in 2016, when Trump first came into office, he was given the chance to release these files, but he was advised by people from within the establishment not to release them. This time he says he will, but personally, I doubt it's actually going to happen. Finally, there's one more story to add to all of this. It's the story that people like myself, and hopefully those of you who are watching this video, normally focus on, and that is the truth about space and the reality around us, and UFO disclosure. Through 2024, UFO disclosure has chugged along and continued to push forwards. And even though we've had no dramatic revelations up until this point, we have seen a consistent hammer being hit on the key points of a non-human intelligence that exists, of the fact that the United States government knows about this, that it's recovered crafts and has the bodies. And now there are more and more high-level and authoritative people coming out and hammering home those truths to a point that even the normal population are beginning to realize there must be something to this.
There's a lot of interest in the people coming from space, you know.
Yes.
And I know you're interested in that.
Oh, very interested in that. How much did they tell you about that?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd they tell you?
Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
If you had to assign a probability to that statement, that you believe extraterrestrial intelligence has visited this planet, what probability would you assign?
100%. And that's not just my opinion. I mean, look, the National Defense Appropriation Act, passed last year, signed by Biden in December. 30 pages of that is the establishment of an unidentified aerial phenomenon office, the creation of a whistleblowers program specifically that allows people from within, who I'm going to say this, who've been working on the reverse engineering programs, reverse engineering of objects, so that they can come in and break their oaths, but it's specifically just to talk to Congress and give that information in classified settings. And that the most recent one that happened was just last weekend, and it created quite a hornet's nest in Washington.
I've had people who I know are in the know, and I've mentioned this before, and one of them told me the truth is indigestible. It's not something that we would be able to fully grasp or entertain, and that it's like, you know, it would be like telling somebody something that they can't do anything about, and they don't know what the repercussions of that would be. It's so great. It's so world-changing and transformational, and maybe not in a good way, you know? So I'm sure people have whispered in some people's ears, do you really want to do this? You know, do you really want to go out and talk about this publicly? Do you have any kind of fallback position when people start asking the million questions they're going to have, and you're basically saying we're powerless against a entity or entities that are here, we can't see, we have no idea of their intentions and capabilities. It may mean that, you know, we're just immaterial. I mean, you know, you can get into, there's so many avenues.
There have been some significant rumors of events regarding UAP that may occur within, you know, like 10 years or so. I don't know if it's something coming or a natural disaster. You hear of something big coming down the pike. Have you heard of these claims? And if so, do you have any idea what it may be?
Yes, I've heard of them. Yes, I'm aware of them, and I'm not able to have that conversation.
Got it.
It's not my conversation to have, but I am aware of it.
The truth is, whether we get some big dramatic announcement and some kind of disclosure this year or next year or even the year afterwards, our ongoing exploration of the solar system, and indeed the James Webb Telescope's view of the galaxy and universe around us, is increasingly giving us new information that suggests that life may be far more prevalent than we previously expected. Just go back 1 or 2 decades, and the idea that there might be life within our solar system would be scoffed at. And the prospect that we would ever be able to detect a technosignature out beyond our own solar system, again, would have been scoffed at. But this year we saw the release of a number of news stories that indicate not only are there conditions for life within our own solar system, but we might be on the brink of discovering something quite incredible and marvelous outside of it.
Picture Mars as a world with water. According to NASA, oceans covered as much as 20% of the red planet, but new evidence suggests there's still some left underground. Findings released this week in the National Academy of Sciences say a hidden ocean could be trapped up to 12 miles deep. Scientists behind the discovery say it is the best evidence yet of liquid water on Mars.
As if the solar system couldn't get any more fascinating, a brand new study suggests that oceans of water may be hiding within planets Uranus and Neptune.
And this is really important for all the other planets that we found in the universe, all these new exoplanets, because many of those are going to be what we call sub-Neptunes, slightly smaller than Neptune and Uranus, and they may have life.
Scientists have discovered a gigantic ring-shaped structure in space, which is so big
it challenges our understanding of the universe. Structures that big shouldn't exist, according to one of the guiding principles of astronomy.
Shares of Google jumping today after announcing that quantum computing breakthrough, saying that its new chip, Willow, can perform a milestone computing task in just 5 minutes and would have taken a classical supercomputer longer than the history of the universe to do.
And then he said this, and remember, this is the guy who's from Google's head of quantum AI. He said, "This mind-boggling number exceeds known timescales in physics and vastly exceeds the age of the universe. It lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes, in line with the idea that we live in a multiverse, a prediction first made by David Deutsch."
There have been rumors circulating in the astronomy community, of course, and the more general scientific community, rumors circulating for most of the year that the James Webb Space Telescope has maybe found something, strong evidence of a techno signature.
Hopefully that's a bit more of a positive story to wrap the video up on. Before we finish, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that any of these bizarre and strange happenings, stories, themes, and crises that we've talked about in today's video might somehow be interrelated? You think the emergence of an artificial general intelligence, which will likely gain total superiority over any other existing models and become the single source of AI, with a single control point and a single interface that someone will have control over, or potentially lose control over, do you think that that might have something to do with the impending emergence of a non-human intelligence? Do you think that our sudden speculation about life within the universe might be related to the whistleblowers who are coming out from within the defense and intelligence community? And do you think that this whole dialogue and this increasing social consciousness around the concepts of the apocalypse, of extinction, and the idea of other kinds of intelligence is somehow related to our geopolitics? Personally, however crazy it might sound, I'm inclined to believe that all of these things are connected, and that whether or not all hell breaks loose at the beginning of 2025, all of these strands are conspiring together to trickle something strange and bizarre into our reality. Now, I can't prove that to you in a scientific way. I can't compellingly convince you to believe such things. But I do think it's important that we start to ask these bigger interconnected questions. Because if non-human intelligence exists, and if it is superior to us in every way imaginable, they'll be aware of all these crises, and they haven't done anything about them.